Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast, where we talk about winning in all four of the essential areas of life.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Four Fires Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about coaching boys into men. So I've got a really cool guest today, Coach John Small, and he's a football coach. Forgive me, what school is it?
East Coweta High School.
Okay, East Coweta High School. Welcome, Coach Small,
Thank
to the podcast.
Good to be here.
Why don't we take a little time for you to introduce yourself so that we know who you are, and then I'll go through and give a little Four Fires explanation, and then I've got some questions I want to ask you. So
Okay. Well, you did a pretty good job of saying who I was. But Coach Small from East Coweta, been a head football coach for 27 years. Been a lot of ups and downs in the career, but the main thing is the main thing, and that's loving on kids and helping them develop into men. And that's been my heart's desire, my wife's heart's desire, as well as my two daughters. So we've kind of tag teamed it through our career, and we've been blessed.
So, yeah, I actually met Coach Small at the beginning of this year. The Four Fires nonprofit did an event called it Becoming a Warrior, where we're trying to get some male high school students together. And so Coach brought a couple of his players, and that was really cool and thankful we got to meet then. Before we dive into the questions, I want to do a little Four Fires explanation for the listeners. So if you're unaware, the whole Four Fires idea is really it's becoming the man that God created us all to be. So it's this idea of being four-dimensional. So every day, the metaphor is we wake up with an arm full of logs, and our logs represent our time and our energy and the resources that we have to allocate and invest into the different areas of our life. And so we say we have four essential areas of life. And the first area is, especially for men, we can start with the professional fire. You know, men, we're supposed to provide and protect. So the professional fire is one that every man is like, for sure, I need to go find out what I'm good at and figure out how to convert it into cash and provide for my family so that I can also be generous. So we have the professional fire, and absolutely we should be making sure that we're putting logs on that fire, because like any fire, if you're not putting any fuel on it, it's going to go out. It's going to burn down and turn to ashes and coal. So we have the professional fire. Then we have the people fire. That's our relationships with our family and our friends, making sure that we're stewarding our relationships well, because it does us no good to achieve professional success if you have no one to share it with. So the people fire is absolutely important. And then the physical fire, that's taking care of our bodies, making sure that we're controlling every bite of food that goes in our mouth and how we're exercising so that we have healthy bodies, so that our bodies are the vehicle that God's given us to do the work that He's called us to do and make memories and have fun, and it feels good to be physically healthy. So the physical fire is really important. And then that last fire, which we've talked about this before, the order that I just named them off is the way that the world thinks about them as level of importance. But the last fire, which is actually the most important, is the purpose fire, and that's about our relationship with God. And it all starts with answering the question, do you believe that you have a soul? And does that soul have a creator? Does your creator care about being in relationship with you? And does your creator have an expectation and an ideal for the choices that you make? So we say it's about your connectedness with God and how you live out your commitments to Him. So when you're living intentionally, trying to be connected with your creator, being physically healthy, managing your relationships with your family and friends well, and actively trying to advance professionally and be exceptional in that area, we call it living four-dimensionally. So that's the whole idea behind the Four Fires, and that's why the Four Fires nonprofit and the Four Fires podcast and all of this exists. Our mission is to build an army of four-dimensional men. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Four Fires for any of the listeners if they hadn't heard that yet. So I always like to revisit it, because I think the key to adult learning is repetition. So
Most definitely.
It's good to revisit it, keep it fresh on your mind. So how many years have you been a football coach?
27.
Over the 27 years, or maybe more even before you were a coach, what do you feel like you've learned about helping boys become men?
Well, I think the number one thing is that it's not about me.
Okay.
It's not about me as an individual. It's about serving those around me, assistant coaches, your staff, your kids. A lot of people, it becomes about them. I won't say that I've always been perfect in that, but I think as you grow, You kind of figure out what the main thing is.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about the kids that you're entrusted with, that you're steward over, and trying to have the biggest impact you can possibly have on them each and every day.
That's good. You just said the word steward. I love that word. On the back of our Four Fires small group book, it says, "Are you stewarding your life well?" Because I think the big theme of the Four Fires is recognizing that these four areas are blessings from God. So like your position, so your professional fire is being a football coach, and that is a gift from God. God placed you there. So anyway, I love that word, steward.
And I think that as a believer, whatever position you're in, whatever job you do, whatever role you're in, what I've learned from mentors in my life is to leverage your influence. Don't take it lightly. If you have influence, if you have a platform, make sure that you're leading from it in the right way, not the wrong way, to impact those around you. I want to make sure that, like I said, I hadn't always been perfect at it, but one day we stand before God, I want to make sure he says, well done, not, hey, let me show you what you missed here real quick for a minute. A lot of times kids will ask, Coach, what's your greatest fear? And I said, my greatest fear is standing before the Father. I don't think he'll do this. I said, but him taking me and saying, I want you to just sneak a peek at this. This is what I had for you, had you done this. Because I tell these kids that, hey, the plans that you have for your life are not even close to what he has for you. And you got to trust that. So just trying to be an example every day for them and leverage our influence, have an impact on them, and loving them right where they're at. I think we as coaches play the father role, we play the counselor role, we play the disciplinarian role, we play the nurturer role. There's a lot of roles that we play that have nothing to do with an X and an O in a game plan for a game or practice. But developing these guys as young men is something we stress every day, to young coaches that we have on staff and older coaches we have on staff. And those guys have to share the same philosophy and same belief that this is why we're here. Yes, we want to win because we're competitive people, and that's why you play the game. God placed in my heart early in my career that he does not care how many wins and losses you have as a coach. Mm-hmm. What he cares about is, are you stewarding well? Are you bringing kids with you to the kingdom? So not always perfect in that because we're competitive people, but you got to remind ourselves of that every day, what our purpose is, why we're really here.
What do you do specifically that's different, I guess, when you're thinking about more of a kingdom mindset?
Well, you have rules and regulations you're supposed to follow in public schools, but you want it to be player-led. So our job is to teach them and then encourage them, empower them to become the leaders that they need to be and kind of walk beside them. And some years you have a number of kids that do that. Some you have one or two that are willing to do that. Every year is different, but it's to get behind that guy and support him any way that you can, but get those guys to step into some leadership roles that they need to be in now and for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
So we do a lot of stuff in the off season. It never ends. We go back to the drawing board, see how we can make things better. We make sure our older kids that are graduating have a plan, whether it be going to play college ball, whether it be going to college, or whether it be get placed in a job somewhere, because we feel that's our responsibility to them, not just to say, thank you, see you later, but to see them through, because we talk about our relationships that we build they're not contracts. We want transformational coaching going on, that we're changing lives, that we're impacting people. And then, understanding, the hard part is understanding that you're not going to save every kid. And that's a hard pill to swallow for coaches. But our job is to just spread the seeds and be an example. And sometimes 10 years later, a guy comes back and sees you as a coach and is like, hey, man, this is where I'm at. And you're like, oh, I never thought you'd make it. But, those seeds were planted. It wasn't our job to make them grow. With my coaches, I use the story from the Bible where Jesus, the young rich ruler, asked Jesus, how do I inherit the kingdom? And Jesus says, well, go sell all your possessions. And he says, I can't do that. And Jesus didn't negotiate with him. He didn't say, well, okay, just get rid of half of them. Mm-hmm. He was like, okay, see ya. So remembering that you're not God, you're not going to save every kid. You can't. Some kids are going to make their decisions. You just pray that you did something that had some impact, that later on in life they get it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the most rewarding, is when those kids come back and they're successful. And
that is a hard pill to swallow. And I'm not specifically trying to help young men or really boys.
Yeah.
Some of the, I guess a ninth grader is more of a boy than
Oh,
than
yeah.
a man, but even grown men that I've had conversations with as we're getting Four Fire small group started and getting guys to do our 30-day ruck program. At first, I was going into this whole, like, we're going to build an army of four-dimensional men. Somebody asked me, like, who's your target audience? And I was like, men. If you're a man, it's for you. And I've learned that that's actually far too broad. It's more of men who want to grow.
Yeah.
Because you just said you're not going to save everyone. And I'm not trying to save people.
Correct.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to serve
Yeah.
people well
Yeah.
and say, here's some cool resources I think would help you
Oh,
grow.
yeah.
But that is hard to, because I want every guy to experience growth. But if the guy doesn't want it,
And I guess
gotta
that,
move
let
on.
me rephrase that. Like, I don't think I'm the savior. I think saving them from themselves
No, right.
in terms of, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, man, you got a chance to go change your family. You can go to college and get an education. You can break some generational curses, man. And when they don't make it because they don't do what they need to do, you're like, you can spend a lot of time and waste a lot of time on somebody that doesn't want it. So you can't save that guy. You have to go. We use a term in our program of focus on the 98% because we say 2% are the ones we spend a lot of our time on because they're getting in trouble, they're doing stupid things, they're causing disruptions, and we spend all our time focused on the 2% instead of focusing on the 98% that are doing what they're supposed to do. We really take them for granted. We know he's going to do right, so I'm going to go. But we tell the guys, don't be a 2%er. Do not be a 2%er. And when they're doing something crazy or stupid or get out of whack for a little bit, you're like, hey, you're a 2% guy right now. And then they can tie that back to, okay, I know what a 2% guy is. That's not what I want to be, But even us as coaches and as humans, sometimes we're a 2% guy, So we have to check ourselves too,
Yeah.
Or check another coach or they check you and you kind of get back and get held accountable on some things. So that's how we look at the saving part. It's Jesus' job to save them, not mine.
Try to change directions. Just a random question. Do you have kids?
I do. I have two daughters.
Okay.
Yep.
2 daughters. Okay.
23 and 20, and they both are. One's graduated from college, has a job in Augusta. One is in nursing school, finishing up.
Okay. How have you seen from either having, I guess you're always with guys because you're a football coach, but then you have 2 daughters. How has having your own kids maybe impacted how you're influencing these guys, or vice versa? How has being a football coach impacted maybe the way you raised your daughters?
I would say I've got the greatest wife in the world because she keeps me level-headed. When they were younger, the season would end and I'd be at home and be telling them something to do or correcting them on something. And my wife would have to remind me that, hey, these aren't your players. These are your daughters. How you're talking to them. Lower your voice a little bit. Slow down a little bit. So she would kind of check me and I'd have to kind of decompress. But I think my daughters growing up doing this with us and being involved, being around it, they know our hearts. They get to know the players. They know what those players experience, who's going through a tough time. So it's really been a blessing for them to live through that because they have empathy for people. And I tell my players, hey, I'm not going to expect anything from you that I wouldn't expect from my own kids. So I'm not going to do it one way here and another way at home, and they're girls. But I think my wife did a better job raising them than I did but they're both strong-willed women that love the Lord, and they make me want to be a better person every day.
Cool. I really like the don't be a 2%er. So have you and your coaching staff, have y'all have chosen to help each other not waste too much time on a 2%er? Is that kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's because every coach has you want to have the same philosophy and belief, but everybody and you got to recognize in coaching, I may be able to relate to a kid a certain way, but not be able to relate to this other kid in the same way. But this assistant coach may be able to relate differently. So one thing we do on our staff is during the season, we call it Nugget Wednesday. Before I became a head coach, I kind of had written my own booklet of what I would do from people I learned from, people I worked for, and what I would add into a program, what I would take away, and everybody has their own way of doing it. So On Wednesdays, a coach is assigned a week, and after practice, he gets up and he delivers the nugget to the team. It could be 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. He can share whatever he wants. The floor is open to him. So the kids really look forward to that Wednesday because they go, who are we going to hear from today? So they're not hearing from me all the time. They're hearing from another guy that gets up, and a guy may get up and talk about, hey, when I grew up, man, I grew up without a dad. This is what I struggled with. Or whatever it may be, every situation imaginable. Well, what happens is the kids can go, I can relate to that guy. I didn't really relate to what that guy was talking about last week. Mm-hmm. But that guy, he doesn't coach my position group, but he's been through what I've gone through.
Yeah.
So it builds a relationship within the team, you know. Mm-hmm. So definitely. It's been really neat, but it also puts younger coaches in a position where they got to get up and talk.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to do that one day. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they know I'm trying to help them with that when they do that, but they do a good job in it, and they take pride in it, you know, and want to make sure that they bring something to the table, you know. So getting everybody to understand that everybody's different, everybody's going to learn different, everybody's at a different place in their life, and that's okay. How do we reach them the best way?
Yeah. So you had said a minute ago about how you're trying to make sure that things are player-led, or you're trying to influence and equip your players to lead. So what back to that question, like what do you do? What does your team do specifically? What are you trying to get those guys to lead?
You know, we do a lot of stuff in the off season, one day a week with our team when we have them, and it's basically character ed, and we cover a lot of different topics with them to hopefully give them a base of understanding of, hey, what is adversity? What does it look like? How do we respond to it? You know, and I think football is the greatest teacher of life. I played a lot of other sports. I love other sports. But I think football is the greatest teacher of life in terms of dealing with adversity, because you're going to face adversity every single day. You're going to get knocked down at practice. You're going to get beat deep. You're going to miss a block. Whatever. You're going to drop a pass. The weight room, you're not going to hit the weights you want to hit. You're going to be tired. You don't want to work out. You hadn't eaten all day. Whatever. But we talk about adversity as an opportunity for greatness. We say when adversity hits, it's not time to go crawl in a hole and feel sorry for yourself. A lot of them are taught that. But it's an opportunity for greatness. And we talk about, hey, when you're 30 years old and your family's going through a tough time, man, adversity, you're going to know how to deal with it. So you're trying to plant those seeds of confidence of, I've been here before, I've done this, I know how to deal with this. So we approach different topics like that, so that when we refer back to them during the season, it resonates with them of, okay, been here, done that, know what this is. Mm-hmm. And we stress to the parents that, you know, let your kid strain and struggle. Do not baby him. You know, let him struggle through some stuff. Because I think today's kids live in a world of, I can't even name all the electronic games they have. But I asked my kids one time, I said, hey, when you're playing PlayStation or Xbox or whatever y'all play, when it's not going right for you in that game, what do? They turn it off, start over. I said, that's not real life. Mm-hmm. You got to get ready for the next and go again, you know. So we try to teach a lot of character things through the off season. You know, we have a team chaplain on our staff that is legally able to do whatever he does. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah.
And it's year round. You know, you spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
You know.
So will you communicate directly to the parents when you say they're like, let your kids struggle?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's every conversation. In meetings we have with our parents, we're very honest with them.
How often are you meeting with the parents?
We'll meet, you know, big meetings 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
You know, in a huge setting.
Yeah.
You know, and then we tell our parents that, you know, I'll never meet with you to talk about playing time. Mm-hmm. That will never be a topic of discussion. Mm-hmm. But anything else that pertains to your kid or your life, doors always open. So we try to have that open line of communication, mm-hmm. you know. But our kids know our door's always open. Whatever they need, there's nothing they can't share with us.
Yeah. And
the funny thing is seeing freshmen come in that you tell that to, that they don't really understand it, but then as they get older, they get more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because young men today have a real problem trusting men, because so many men have failed them in their life. Mm. So getting that kid to understand that that's an unfortunate situation you dealt with, but your focus cannot be on you're not going to become that. Because if that's your only focus, you're not getting better at what you need to do to not be that for your family. So let's focus on you. How do we get through this? So we get a lot of opportunities like that one-on-one, with kids, and because I think it's the relationship our guys have done a really good job of developing with the kids.
That's great. I just wrote down consistency. I think that's probably why it's working, because like your Nugget Wednesday and the character ed stuff. I mean, the Nugget Wednesday, that's every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Yeah.
During the season.
During the season.
Then in the off season, it's every Wednesday in the weight room.
Yeah.
Locker room.
Yeah. So I think my takeaway is, I don't have kids yet, but when I do have kids, the takeaway is the consistency. Because I remember in high school, it seemed like, or even in college, it would flow like this, of like, we'd have a team meeting and it was good, and maybe the coaches would share some bit of wisdom. Then it was like nothing for like 2 months, and then we'd try to do something again, and it, I mean, rightfully so. Me and all the other players were just like, I mean, cool, like thanks for talking to us, but like I don't feel a connection like you were talking about, where if you're hearing it every week, like you said, it'll still ebb and flow for each individual player being like, oh, I can relate to Coach so-and-so now because I didn't know he went through the same thing I went through. So anyway, I think consistency is probably the most important thing, more than what you're saying the times that you meet. It's because if the problem is that the young guys don't trust adults or men in particular, the only way to, I guess, build trust is to show the consistency.
Yeah. Kids are waiting for somebody to let them down.
Interesting.
Because it's happened to them. And we got to be a light in their life of, we're going to be here with you. We're going to be here with you. And then those kids that haven't had that happen to them, they got to understand, okay, this is what this kid goes through. He acts the way he acts because of what he deals with. You may not have to deal with that. But what you do is you go lock arms with him, love him through it, and that's teaching them to have empathy for people, not to be taken advantage of. But, we work under our motto is ILMT, which means I love my teammates. We base that out of Matthew 22, where the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind. But the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so it's like, it doesn't matter what color you are, what nationality you are, what your beliefs are, what you come from, what you don't come from. You're a team. We're called to love one another no matter what. And I tell the kids all the time, like, man, if the world functioned like a football team, we'd have no problem. But that's not how it works. But we get it. We can only worry about our small circle and impact that small circle, and then they can go make their small circles, as they go through life and get it to be bigger and bigger. But we talk a lot about love. We talk a lot about forgiveness. We talk about caring for one another. And when it happens, it's pretty cool to see. In saying that, you're going to get the enemy attacking in every different direction he can, a certain kid or a certain kid, whatever, to try to disrupt things. But being aware of that and be guarded on it is what we have to do every day.
Yeah. So maybe on that topic of consistency with what you guys do, what do you feel like your greatest advice would be to dads out there? I'm going to be a dad one day. What would be your greatest advice for specifically raising sons, I guess?
Be present.
Okay.
Be present. I tell our dads that when the young ones come in, I said, hey, your kid's athletic career is their athletic career. Nobody cares what you did. My days of playing are over. Y'all's days of playing are over. Your kid ain't got to be the best player. That doesn't define him. We talk a lot about what defines you. It's not how you play in a game. It's not whether you win or lose. It's your character in the midst of it. That's what's going to define you and you're going to be remembered by. But you get a lot of overzealous parents, and I get it. I mean, I had kids that played sports. Both of mine played sports, and you have to kind of guard yourself and go, okay, wait a minute. If I'm preaching this message, I got to live it too. But letting them do it at their pace, they're going to get out of it what they want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Just because we want it for them doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's what they want, and if they're going to go after it,
Yeah.
But being present is huge with young men. That dad that sits in the stands that doesn't say a word, but he's there every Friday, and he sees his kid after the game and gives him a hug. That kid's good. That dad that's yelling from the stands at his kid or another kid, that ain't helping that kid.
Yeah.
He's making him not want to play. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know. And my daughters they taught me a real good lesson. One of them played golf, one of them played volleyball, and they were both very good at it. And when I would be at golf practice or a golf match or volleyball practice or a volleyball match, and I took them home, they learned. They would say, "Okay, Dad, talk to me like a coach on the ride home, what you saw." And that would open the door for me to go, "Hey, work on this, work on this." Or they would say, "Hey, Dad, just talk to me like a dad on the way home." And so I knew right then that we ain't talking sports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that took me a while to learn, and it wasn't like – I think they did a good job of – because I would give my opinion, but I think I learned through them that we'll let you know when we want your opinion on that. And they took the lead on that, and it taught me a lot. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know.
I can't even remember where I heard this. I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff, so it might have just been off of a podcast. But the quote was, "I'm not trying to raise good kids. I'm trying to raise kids into being exceptional adults." And so I just remember hearing that, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try to remember that whenever I have kids, because the guy was saying, I think that's something parents get wrong, of like, I'm just trying to raise good kids. But really, we need to be thinking about raising that kid to become, so stewardship, I think that our kids are blessings from God. So it's not, God has a plan for all of our kids to become a man or a woman of God. And so recognizing that as a parent, and again, I'm not a parent yet, but I'm just like thinking ahead, that it's my job to help my son or my daughter become the man or the woman that God created them to be. And so when you just mentioned how the word coach, like, hey, Dad, I want you to coach me. When I think about coach, I actually don't think about sports. I think about a guide. There's a book called Hero on a Mission, and it talks a lot about finding a guide, and the guide is not supposed to be the hero. So when I think about parenting, one day when I'm trying to guide my kids, I don't want to come in and be the hero in their story. I want to help be the guide who helps them be the hero in their story.
Right.
Just like you mentioned, like, nobody cares that how many home runs I hit when my son's playing baseball one day. Nobody cares. So having that approach, maybe, again, I'm just thinking about trying to give this advice to myself.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm a dad, to remember that it's not about me. I'm trying to raise my kids to become the man or the woman that God created them to be. So. Oh
yeah. I think too, to hit on your point there, is if I could go back and change some things as a parent raising my daughters, I would, because we're human. We're going to make mistakes. But I heard a pastor say the other day, and I shared this with one of my young coaches who's just had a baby, is I said the guy made a good point. He said year 1 through 7 is all about discipline. Discipline.
I've heard this. Yeah.
You've heard it?
Yeah.
And then it goes on to instruction. It goes on to, and then when they're 18, they can be your friend, but they're not your friend. And I think that's, in society today, we have a lot of kids whose parents are their friends.
Too early.
Yeah. And they're always making a way out for them.
Not letting them struggle.
They got to struggle.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it as a lot of kids are afraid to fail because of what it looks like, for what their peers think about them. And we've probably all experienced that growing up. But, you know, we tell the kid, you got to fail. Because if you fail at something, that means you tried something. If you never try something, you can't grow. But it's like in the weight room, if, you know, the goal of every young kid in high school is to put 2 plates on each side to bench press 225. You could put a 45-pound plate, a 35, and a 10, they can get it. But as soon as you put 2 plates on, mentally, they think they can't get it.
It's heavier.
And it's still the same weight. But once a kid hits 225, whether it be on squat, power clean, bench, they go through the roof because they've got over that threshold mentally. And that's like in life, you're going to fail at stuff. But when you fail, look at it as failing forward. You're not going backwards. you're failing full. We all make mistakes. We learn from it. It's like when you fall down and skin your knee as a kid and you get a scab on it, that skin gets a little bit tougher.
Mm-hmm.
You fall again, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's okay to drop a pass, be deep. Don't be afraid to go give it all you got because you're afraid of what it may look like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in society today with kids in general. You got to be okay with failing sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen.
And I think what we can do as adults for the younger people is making sure that they see us want to like maybe talk about it when there is a failure. It's not like it's not just like anytime there is a failure we're screaming at them and telling them what they did wrong.
Yeah.
It's like there's some authenticity there of like, what'd you learn? I had a guy tell me, he was like, he doesn't even think about whether he doesn't think about it as succeeding and failing. He said you either win or you learn. Like he didn't even use the word fail. He's like if you, and he's a big business guy, and so he was helping me in my professional fire, and at the time I was doing a little leaf blowing business on the side to try to make some money, and he was like, I did it, and I broke even and made a little more money than what I invested into it, and I just decided to quit doing it. And he was like, well, what'd you learn? And I was like, I learned these things, and he was like, well, good, because I felt like I didn't really win. I didn't make as much money as I was wanting to. But he was like, well, you didn't win, but what'd you learn? And that mindset, like you just were talking about how powerful our minds are.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that was some good wisdom I got from a guy.
That is.
Where it's like, we need to fail, but don't think of yourself as a failure when you fail.
Yeah.
What did you learn? And let's move on.
Yeah, we tie it back into adversity. Opportunity for greatness. You didn't win that play.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you going to do? So that's the way we look at it. But those are all tools those guys are going to use when they're older, like you did with your leaf blowing business.
Yeah.
They're going to apply these lessons to life later on, which is cool to me.
Yeah.
So we tell, as a staff, we talk about, if a kid makes a mistake, it's not like he's trying to make a mistake. So there's no reason to scream and yell. And I said, but if they make a great play, that's when you go nuts for them. But the only non-negotiable is effort, because that takes zero talent.
Yeah.
So if effort's not good, you get in them. You get on them. Making a mistake, if it's great effort, okay, you made a mistake, we can fix this.
Yeah.
You make a great play, hey, celebrate them. Effort, non-negotiable. Yeah. You're getting ripped on that now. You're going to pay for that one.
Yeah.
Because you ain't got to be a 5-star athlete to give effort, So
have you ever gotten upset and disciplined one of your players when they actually did good, they made the play, but you could tell that their effort wasn't good?
Yeah, I think then you challenge them, hey, you could be so much better.
You could do a little bit better, yeah.
Yeah, you're underachieving, And now, me saying how we like to do it, we're not always perfect on that. If you came to one of our practices or a game, I may go crazy on a kid, but one thing we try to do is follow back up with our players right after practice and go put our arm around them and say, hey, wasn't a great day today, but we got tomorrow. Because if a coach doesn't do that, position coach or whoever, that kid's going home and thinking about that, where that coach ain't thinking about it. He going home and it ain't on his mind.
Yeah.
He's just in coaching mode. But I believe it's important that you always follow back up with them and say, hey, And the one thing is, we tell our kids, if somebody loves you, they're going to hold you accountable. Now, I know a lot of y'all may not be held accountable outside of here. Y'all got to figure that one out. But if you're with us, we're going to hold you accountable. And you may not like it, but it's because we love you and want the best for you, So that's kind of tough, too, because they may get to run freely outside of there, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We say in the people fire, and that's, family and friends, but in your case, you have a lot of influence on when you're coaching your players. So they're not family, and there might not even be friends because it's like such a big age difference where you're coaching them. So it is a little bit different. But we say in the people fire, you don't have control, but you have significant influence. So in all the other fires, professionally, I can control how hard I work and potentially earn as much money as I want to earn. Physically, I can go dominate it, eat right, work out, and I'm going to be physically healthy. Yeah. And then even with God, James 4:8 says, draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. I mean, I can control how much time I spend trying to connect with God. But in the people fire, I can have significant influence with the decisions my wife makes, but I can't control her fully.
Right.
So it's really it's the only fire really where we don't have full control. So I think maybe arguably that's the people fire might need some of our greatest attention and effort because we can't just muscle our way through it.
Right. It takes time. It
Yeah.
takes consistency. Like working with young people, they're waiting for you to fail them. Like, all right, is this for real? Is this guy for real? Is this guy for real? You know, he says these things. This one says these things. Do they really mean it? You know, and so being consistent is.
That's like, it almost doesn't feel good knowing that you're on pins and needles. Because if the kid's waiting on you to fail them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say that early on they're trying to see are you for real or not for real.
Yeah.
You know, but I also believe you have to be transparent with your kids. You know, if you screw up as a coach or you say something that's contrary to what you're trying to be, you got to own it with them. You know, because what a kid's not with that. Kids don't want to be wrong. I didn't do that. I wouldn't. You know, no. Hey, I'm a grown man. I was wrong, fellas. My bad. I'm human. You know, but teaching them it's okay to screw up. Just own it, and then let's move on from it.
Yeah.
Let's don't keep trying to cover it up and lie about it. And it just makes it worse. You know, just own your mess. Let's deal with it. You know, because we all got a mess.
Yep.
So I think that part, you know, they once they figure that out, man, it's so rewarding. And usually they don't till they're older. But then you see them start speaking the language and like, you know what? I thought you were an idiot, coach, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But, man, that's some for real stuff.
So do you typically see your juniors and seniors, they just get it more?
So you see a huge maturation process from ninth grade, fall semester going into second semester from the ninth grade.
Okay.
And then your sophomores that are going to become juniors, your juniors are going to be seniors. You see a maturation process because their role changes.
Yeah.
And some don't get it. Some graduated seniors, they never got it. You know, they're just like they were as a freshman.
Yeah.
But then the ones you see that grow and mature and start taking on a different role, that makes you proud. You're like, okay, good.
Just understanding the different stages, even me thinking about it, I'm only 25, so it wasn't that long ago that I was in high school and in college. I remember thinking when I was a senior in college, so I was 22, and he shared the four fires with me as one of my professors, shared the four fires with me, and I remember that year, senior year, I was married already, so I was like, that's gold. Like just that life philosophy. I remember it. I remember just accepting it like, oh, that's good stuff. And my eyes were like open to it. And so maybe it was because I was married and I know that I was about to graduate and all this from college. So I was like, all right, it's time to grow up. I got to start growing and being a man. But I remember thinking, man, if I would have heard about the four fires 2 years prior, I don't know if I would have even, I'd have been like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then moved on. So I was just curious, like, do you see that, like, do you have ninth graders that really take in these Nugget Wednesdays or?
Yeah, some of them do, and those are the ones that become
the
better
really
leaders.
Solid ones, yeah.
Yeah. It's fun to watch them come in because they change so much physically, mentally, spiritually, in every aspect. Sometimes you see parents growing with them, you know, and their kids getting something and sharing something with their parents, and you see transformation, and so but every year is different. Every kid is different, you know, and we tell the kids, hey, if we do X, Y, and Z, it doesn't guarantee we're going to win a game, but it gives us a chance.
Increases our chances.
If we don't do it, we ain't got a chance.
Yeah.
So don't think this is 100% guaranteed to make you win a game.
It's not transactional.
No.
Yeah.
But it will change your life. The game of life. If you apply these things, you'll consistently be successful in those areas. You know.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we roll.
Back to what you said about just be present. Most lessons are caught, not taught. I've heard that, and I believe it. And so
100%.
that I think that supports the be present because you could tell you could, whether it's one of your players or it's me one day with my son, I can tell him the most amazing bit of wisdom one time or even 10 times, you know, over the course of his life while he's living in my house. and it might not mean that much, regardless of how good it was when I said it. If it was only a couple times over the 18 years that he was there, it might not mean that much to him that I was trying to just teach him something. But if he sees it every week for 18 years, it's gonna stick with him,
no doubt,
and he's gonna catch it, and rather than me just trying to force it to him. So anyway, I fully believe that lessons are caught, not taught.
100%.
What do you feel like is the biggest lesson that you're learning or learned recently in your life?
I don't know. I think through this season, with the struggle that it was, a tough year, that we're to give thanks in all circumstances, and really understanding that in all means good, bad, ugly, positive, negative, does not matter. But we're to give thanks because we can learn through a situation, we can grow in a situation, whether it's good or bad, and allowing God to work through it in your life. And then it goes back to being consistent with your players, your kids, because it may be tough, but you can't act a certain way because things are tough. And then you can't act a certain way if you win. You got to be consistent. We're going to be like this every day, win or lose. We're going to put a smile on our face. We're going to come to work, because kids can't do that. They don't know how to do that yet. And you sometimes have coaches that don't know how to do that. So you really got to guard against that and remind yourself that this game doesn't define me. Whether we win or not doesn't define me. It doesn't define you as a player. Who you are, what your character is what defines you. So I think when my pastor preached on that during the season, I told you that story. It really resonated with me. I got a mother-in-law right now that's in hospice that loves the Lord, man, and she's ready to go, and she knows where she's going, and she has joy on her face, and giving thanks in that. And here she is towards the end, but she's thankful for that, So every situation we have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
I think the question you want people to ask you is, why do you act that way? Why do you have joy in the midst of trouble? Well, here's why. It ain't got nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
But that can also come as, wait a minute, you said you were this, but you're acting like this.
If you had one thing to tell a young man, what would it be?
One thing. I would want to make sure that he knew who Jesus was, and he had his salvation. He was saved. That's it.
That's it.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Coach. I really appreciate your wisdom and your time, and I really am encouraged by just knowing how intentional you are with what you're doing at East Coweta High School. So thanks so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. And for any other listeners out there, if you guys want more of this content, you can find this podcast on any of the podcast listening platforms or on YouTube. And then visit the 4-fires.com website for any of our additional resources or information. So thanks, guys, and remember to live intentionally.